Well, hey guys, welcome to another Veteran Stories podcast. Pretty excited today. We've got a big crew we're doing an interview on, but we've got the folks here from Home of Record. So let's go ahead and have you introduce yourselves.
Hello, everybody. My name's Gary Schell. I am the founder of the Home of Record project. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, 5 years, 0311 for all my ground pounders out there.
My name's Joe Warhol. I am the Director of Operations for the Home of Record project, 13-year Marine Corps veteran, active duty reserves, and kind of been working in the nonprofit, military-esque space for about 5-6 years now.
Cool.
And I'm Veronica Morgan. I am Director of Community Outreach. I spent 3 years in the Army, 1 year in Afghanistan, and I am happy to be part of this organization.
Very cool. Why don't you tell us about Home of Record and why you founded it?
So the Home of Record project really is a concept that came from a crisis event from my own experience as a veteran. So some backstory on that. 2021, I was diagnosed with stage 3 metastatic cancer, and after undergoing a lot of treatment, doctors started asking questions to the effect of, hey, this is a pretty aggressive cancer, like a little outside the norm. Is there anything you've been exposed to during your service? And I was like, oh, well, actually, burn pits. And then I was also in Japan after the Fukushima reactor melted down, and our naval weapons station was in that same bay. A lot of exposures. Ultimately, that led to me getting that diagnosis. And during that, for anybody that's unfortunately been affected by cancer in their lives, it really puts you through that mental gymnastics of what do you really want to do with your life? Especially if you think you're on borrowed time, you start to really hone in on, what your purpose is and why you're here. Inadvertently going through that diagnosis, I ended up getting into real estate, just figuring out my own situation and how I was going to receive that treatment. Ended up moving back into Phoenix and getting a place in northern Phoenix, rented out my place that I had in Tucson, and before I knew it, I had a couple properties and was rocking and rolling in real estate. With my knowledge in real estate and then wanting to do something now to help veterans that had gone through a similar crisis or were dealing with their own crisis, I decided that I could probably help in the housing space. I realized that there was this huge need in the housing space for assistance for veterans, and whether that's just navigating the eviction process to preventing that eviction through resources, also to include buying homes. There's a ton that goes into the space that we deal with, but that's really how that came together, where I decided I'll do something to help veterans be in that home and know that they have that stable place that they can go back to, hence the name, the Home of Record project, right? Because when we're in the military, we have our home of record that we know, hey, that's where I'm from, that's where I grew up, and have hopefully fond memories of. That's kind of where that all came together. And then from there, Joe definitely helped me out to kickstart it. And we've been growing since, and been doing a lot of great stuff over the past year, but that's pretty much how it came to be.
Cool. Yeah, it's a good name, Home of Record.
Yeah. Most military members hear it and they're like, oh yeah, Home of Record. And then, I think hopefully now we've actually taken the search of Home of Record, which for better or for worse, right? If somebody Googles it, they're going to see Home of Record instead of the military terminology, but hey.
Excellent SEO.
Yeah.
Good job, SEO ninjas over there.
I was going to mention SEO.
Oh man, that's awesome. Cool. Well, so Joe, what made you want to join Home of Record?
Not sure how honest I can be on the podcast here, but I'll say, I worked, kind of backing up to, I was a reservist for a long time, had the opportunity to go on, my combat deployment, do my thing in uniform, but then I ended up, back here in Arizona, back in school, going to ASU, doing my thing. I realized very quickly, there's a lot of organizations out there that do great things in the military/veteran space, but there's always those cracks that certain veterans, a lot of veterans, unfortunately slip through. But after I graduated from ASU, I went back on active duty for about 2 years, went through my separation process, I ended up working in the nonprofit space for about a year after I left the Marine Corps, before I went back to work at ASU at, our alma mater, I'll say. But I was kind of burnt out, if you will, from the nonprofit space. I didn't like some of the political things that were involved, or just the inner politics of nonprofits within the military veteran space. So I had kind of done away with nonprofits. Gary reached out to me only because we had a few degrees of separation. We had never really met before, but he was an ASU student. I was working there on staff. But just this last year, he reached out to me on LinkedIn and be like, hey, I know who you are. I knew he was. Would you be interested in getting this nonprofit going? And I'll be honest, I said no. I didn't really have an interest in getting back into nonprofit just because of what I just explained before. But that was his green flag for me. But yeah, that's what we want. Because I don't want to be that organization that doesn't do anything tangible. I want to be out there, hands on the veteran, guiding them through what they need to do, not just what other people kind of tell them what's good for them. It's like, no, we need to take more of a heavy-handed approach to put them in somewhere and walk them through resources so they're not just getting the fire hose of information that too many other organizations out there do. So yeah, it was just Gary reaching out to me like, hey, are you interested in? And again, my answer was no, but that was his green flag to like, yeah, this is the guy we want. But I dove in head first as soon as we kind of got that squared away. And, we've been rocking and rolling for about 9 months now. And hopefully we can build on what we've done so far and see it explode here soon.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I've talked to a lot of different nonprofits, and the politics that you see behind it, or then just like really, what's your reason for being a nonprofit? Because one of the things that you see with people is they're not always really doing it to be a nonprofit. They're just being a business.
Yeah, and a lot of red tape too.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing. And the main reason I, was reaching out to Joe too is like starting a nonprofit, you can't have a family member on your board. So you have this dilemma of like, okay, I got to find people that really care about this cause, that aren't related to me, that, I'm not married to, different things like that. So, I reached out to Joe because of seeing him on LinkedIn and like what he was doing in the veteran space, and like he mentioned the alma mater, but he's totally right on the green flag thing. When I first got that initial response back of like no, and his reasoning why it was no too was obviously important, and I was like, okay, yeah, now we definitely need him because he's going to be like our guiding compass in the nonprofit to keep us, down the straight and narrow and doing what you just mentioned, like actually doing tangible things as opposed to being a business.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people are out there just to do it for the tax breaks and, okay. Yeah. But for the people who are out there actually trying to do good stuff, like that's what we're looking for.
I feel like I would have quit a long time ago if it was just for the tax break.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
The first 12 months, right? Like it's
been brutal.
It's a marathon. It isn't a sprint.
I'm not looking for a tax break. I'm not looking for a paycheck. Like we all have jobs. We all have so-called careers. But hopefully this turns into something bigger, better that we can build and grow, and it can turn in more of a career growth for all of us.
Sure, absolutely. What about you? What brought you on?
I actually was working for another nonprofit, and I really just, my heart was with veterans. I was actually working with homeless addiction, and I saw the impact that Gary was making, and he was a new organization, and I saw that he was helping veterans, and I'm a veteran also, so I wanted to be part of that, and here I am.
Yeah, the addiction space is hard.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
really rough to see folks going through that.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And veterans definitely can struggle with that also, but for me, I feel like, veterans was where my heart was. So I wanted to focus on that first.
And Veronica, reached out, and after she told me like her background and experience, and she's essentially a Swiss Army knife when it comes to like nonprofit space and like her own veteran experience as well. And obviously, like you guys just mentioned, substance use and all that. I was like, oh, you're going to be an excellent fit for the Home of Record project. And I think we've been really lucky as a board. Like Whitney, Alexis, all of the board members that we've been able to bring on to the Home of Record project has been really organic and been people that have the same values that really align with that mission that we kind of just covered of how like we're going to do something tangible for the veterans and make an impact. in the housing space. And there's always some housing element to it as well. Whitney, one of our other board members, is a real estate agent, so he's in the housing space. You know, I'm a real estate investor. Veronica, I believe you have a flip going, you know, an investor. So yeah, like the housing space to us is also in our DNA as well, and then the veteran piece.
Yeah, no, it's a natural fit. And I mean, especially with everything that's been going on with the economy, it's rough for folks to stay in homes.
I say it's rough for
Right.
everybody. It
Right.
is rough for
Yeah.
everybody. And then you talk about, you know, the millennial generation. There's a lot more that are currently, you know, living at home for that exact reason, and Gen Z as well. And yeah, then I take that context, right, and then I look at veterans that, you know, that transition process and how brutal it's gotten. I think a lot better, thankfully. You know, a lot of steps are being done pre-veteran and other things like that to help that transition process, but it's still brutal, you know. And then you stack on all the other things that come with being a veteran, and then it's like you have unstable housing. How are you supposed to navigate that now?
Where do you have a place to go back to? Say you're fresh 2,
Yeah.
3 weeks, 2 months, maybe even a year out of service, and you're still trying to figure out what you're doing, whether it be going to school, say using a GI Bill, which, you know, I'm very familiar with working in higher ed. You know, and I've seen a lot of students from ASU and, you know, AMU where I'm at now. You know, I see tons of students asking the same questions day in, day out, literally 30, 40 times a day. Like, oh, well, what if I do this? And how about this? You know, a year later, it's like, well, I can only prep you so much. There needs to be some sort of safety net for you on the back end. You take that uniform off and you're not ready to hit the ground running quite yet because you need that time to decompress. And I think we can all agree upon that. But during that time to decompress, that's where a lot of veterans unfortunately fall through the cracks, or they hit rock bottom and, you know, they fall into substance abuse, alcohol, or even, you know, I hate to say it, but sugar. We all know how horrible sugar and other things, food are for you. That's an addiction itself, or gambling. I've known a few veterans who had, you know, disability and income, but they don't have any direction on what they're doing with income, so they go to the casino 2 or 3 times a week and gamble it. And yeah, they win, but they gamble it away. And that's an addiction. And I think with the Home of Record project, our goal is to kind of ease that anxiety, ease that burden. It's like, hey, we're going to put you somewhere to live. You can drop your pack, you can relax, you know, and now you can focus day in on if you're going to school, your job, your career, whatever that looks like for you, your family. So you don't have to worry about housing. We're going to take care of that for you.
That's awesome. 2009 was when I did TAPS. So things have changed a lot since then.
Yes and no.
But that's kind of what I was going to get
Yeah.
into was TAPS is the Transition Assistance Program. So that's what happens when you get out of the military. Everybody says it sucks, but it still sucks.
Yep.
20 years later, 10 years later, however math works. And you know, why is it that we're not getting better at this? What do you guys think people are dropping the ball on, and why we're still having so many problems during the transition?
Can
Who
I
wants
take
to
that one?
Go for it. Yeah. Joe.
Because I work in higher ed, it doesn't make me a subject matter expert on college degrees or anything. I talk to 30, 40 service members and veterans a day sometimes. And again, I hear the same questions. I hear the same issues. I hear everything's the same across different branches, different age groups, different ranks, everything. It's always the same kind of question. You know, in the Marine Corps, it's TRS. It's a TAP program, but it's called TRS, Transition Readiness Seminar. They do a great job at a 10,000 foot level of letting you know all the resources that are available. Great, but it's a check in the box. And unfortunately, too many schools, employers, other resources out there in the nonprofit and for-profit space take a very military-minded approach, which isn't necessarily bad, but we need to take a heavy-handed military approach, but also steer in the direction for the betterment of the veteran. Because a lot of times a veteran leaves, especially if, say, they're a salty, disgruntled E3, E4, they're just happy to be done with their 4
I
years.
don't know any of those.
Yeah, right? They're just happy to be done with their 4 years and they just want to go to school or whatever it is that looks like for them. But sometimes they need direction. They need that heavy hand to reorient them to face southwest instead of straight west, whatever that looks like, again, for them. And I think that's the key is, for what we do, I like to use the word empowerment. Just like in the military, a good leader in the military should be empowering their service member to, do their job for them, kind of next one up, right? I would love to see us basically doing the same, and we have done the same. Empower the veteran. Like, this is what's out there for you. We'll mitigate kind of the back and forth, and we're not going to, shotgun blast you a bunch of resources. We're going to have very clean programs. So like, hey, you need this help, we're going to pull this in for you. Oh, you need this help, we're going to shoot you up to them. So you're not getting blasted, getting the fire hose again of all these different organizations that say they can help, but maybe they really don't. We're going to vet that so we can point you in the right direction. Yes, in a military fashion, but not for the military fashion career-wise. Because a lot of these veterans, they're veterans, but they don't want to identify with that. They just want to, hey, I want to go do my own thing. I want to go be a videographer. I want to go be a painter. I want to go be a musician. A lot of guys don't want to take their MOS translator skills and go work in operations at a, work construction, whatever that is. Nothing against that.
Right.
But a lot of veterans don't want to fit that mold. They want to venture out and do their own things.
Explore, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge variety for as many
Yeah.
folks as who take their MOS and then they run out and they just translate right in.
Yep.
There's all the ones who are like, no, something completely different. So yeah, no, we definitely see that. Who's a leader in the nonprofit space besides yourselves that you're working with to really help veterans out?
Ooh, I got a couple.
Give them some shout outs. Let's get out some good people.
So we have Brett Nebel with MVP, Emerging Vets and Players. So really cool, the nonprofit focused around like the physical fitness and the mental fitness of the veteran. Excuse me. So that's really cool because it lets veterans like exercise and do different hiking activities, things like that. We have Patrol Base Abate, Whitney, again, our director of finance. He is the Phoenix chapter lead for PB Abate. PBA is what they're normally referred to as. Kind of like a holistic community group for veterans that really want to just meet up and do like some kind of fun outdoor event. We have Amanda Tallman with, she does First Page, which is like equine therapy for, I mean, she herself is a veteran, she does it for everybody, but that's a great like mental health resource. There's a ton in the community here in Phoenix that really like address pretty much every need when you look at it, which is awesome because like Joe was mentioning, we empower and we do that by giving them like a very customized approach where we can say like, okay, what are your pain points? Oh, you really are struggling with mental health right now? Okay, well, we have like 5 different resources for that. And they're all quality resources that you can utilize to, and maybe, like the equine thing is really what they needed and they just didn't know it because they didn't know it existed out there. And they've been doing a different type of mental health therapy. We can really probably get into the mental health therapy. I know these two like are experts on their own experience and how getting the right treatment changed the game. And so
100%.
Yeah. And so having that come into play just by knowing these resources in Phoenix and nationally too is huge. But those are the couple of the shout outs.
And I felt like when you're a nonprofit in the veteran space, you have to network with a lot of different organizations because there's something that we may not offer that they offer, and they may be something that we offer that they don't. And to help veterans, you have to work together with other organizations.
Absolutely. Yeah. A couple, I guess I would need to mention Travis Manion Foundation. I've been working with them directly. Joe Greco, he's their kind of senior manager director for Arizona. I've been doing some of their Character Does Matter speaking engagements. So yes, I get to talk about Travis Manion, the foundation, from his family, but also a phrase that he coined and that they use. If not me, then who? I always have to think about like, if not me, then who? And from little simple things just at home or out in the community, but to like what we're doing. Well, if I'm not going to do it, if we're not going to do it, who's going to do it? Mm-hmm. So Travis Manion Foundation has been huge for me for what they do in the community, but also for me personally. It kind of opened up my eyesights to more organizations that are out there doing different things. And if we can tie our veterans into that to get them to express themselves more and be in the community doing events, I mean, that's really what it's all about. It's not just about Home of Record Project and our veterans, it's about the community as a whole. And we need to be making, just like the military does, we need to be making better human beings, better citizens.
Yeah, great. What is the Travis Manion Foundation? What do they focus on?
So it's really kind of around speaking engagements. So Travis Manion was a U.S. Navy Academy grad back in 2005, 6-ish, I want to say. I'm probably going to get the dates messed up here, but he ended up, he was killed in Iraq in 2007. The deployment he went on that he was killed on, he basically took sniper fire for his recon platoon. He was a platoon commander, saved the lives of his platoon essentially, and again, kind of if not me, then who? Yeah. But he went on his second deployment out of choice. He went on the first one with his guys, his boys, his Marines, and then they were gearing up to go on another one. And you know, his family was asking him like, "Why are you going again? Why are you doing this?" type of thing. And he's like, said the same thing: "If not me, then who?" Because yeah, could another lieutenant, could another leader step into his place? Of course, that's the way the military works. But like when you spend that kind of time, and I think we kind of attest to this, you spend enough time with your Marines, with your service members, you build that relationship. They know they're there for you, and vice versa, they're there for you as well. It goes both directions. So he went on that second deployment, again, if not me, then who? And he ended up getting killed, unfortunately. But his family, his sister, stood up the Travis Manion Foundation, and they were out in the community speaking about character traits, leadership, a lot of times now to schools, high schools, younger JROTC, to kind of instill in them that, hey, these character traits, these leadership traits, like they matter. Whether you realize it now at 12, 13, 14, or at 20 or 30 or 40, like these character traits matter. And we're kind of instilling that in them now.
Have you done that stuff?
Yep.
Working with the high schools?
Yep.
How are you finding Gen Z?
I would say from Gen Z perspective, I have more interaction or experience from the higher education side. So I go on base, you know, call it Camp Pendleton or Naval Base San Diego or Fort Huachuca, you know, Luke Air Force Base, wherever. I see of more the Gen Z issue with the junior service members. I notice a lot of times, like I like to be approachable. I was the same way with my Marines. Like, yes, you know, Staff Sergeant Warhol, but really I'm just Joe, right? And I try to be that way with the service members when they walk in my door, come see me, and you know, put out my hand, shake their hand, and be like, "Hey, I'm Joe. What's your name?" And a lot of times they're very quick, especially the junior ones. Like, "I'm, you know, PFC, Lance Corporal, Corporal so and so," and I was like, "No, what's your name?" And they kind of get thrown back a little bit. I try to open them up to conversation because a lot of times the junior service members, because you know they're fresh out of boot camp typically or within a year or two, and they're Gen Z, they don't have the best interpersonal communication skills. So I've noticed when I'm sitting with a student, call it a 19-year-old, you know, E3, they're very fidgety. They have a hard time looking you in the eyes. They have a hard time like shaking your hand. And that's something was instilled in me growing up and in service. Like, hey, be polite, be professional, but have something for yourself that you own. And I think a lot of times with Gen Z now, they don't have that. They're so used to social media, scrolling through their phones, they don't understand what it means to shake a hand, look you in the eye, and have like a real heart-to-heart, kneecap-to-kneecap conversation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that's going to impact our military, just in general?
I don't know. Am I allowed to be honest on the podcast?
Of course.
No, I don't ever want to be that type that's like, oh, well, I was like the best generation of Marines, especially in the Marine Corps. It's very generational.
My generation.
So there's the salty, you know, call it, you know, we'll call it Desert Storm vets. Oh, back in my Marine Corps, back in my Army. And then I'm sure the Vietnam guys were like that with them, and World War II to them. So I don't want to be that guy, like, oh, I was from the GWAT post 9/11 generation, you know, out there, you know, slinging bullets, doing my thing. It's like, no, we're all Marines, we're all service members. But I think if there's one thing that we can do as the post 9/11 generation is to speak with the Gen Zs, especially within the Home of Record project for our transitional housing. Like we're probably going to be seeing more of them, 24, 25, 26 years old, getting out of service and needing that foundation to excel in whatever they're going to do. But part of that is instilling them like, hey, shake a hand, look somebody in the eyes when you're talking to them, not being on your phones or whatever you're doing. That's the biggest thing I noticed about Gen Z. So as far as your question though goes, I don't know if I can give you a direct answer on that, Jack, because I want to give them more credit than what we're giving them.
No, and I mean, I have kids who are Gen Z, right? So I see that, right? My kids aren't going to join the military, and that's part of something that I've been observing a lot, right? Is we're having recruiting issues.
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah.
Each branch is starting to have trouble filling. Marine Corps is the only one that's not had a.
I believe it was the last day they pulled someone in to meet their quota.
Yeah. So I mean, like it's close.
Yeah.
It's close for everybody. Everybody's struggling, and everybody's feeling it. And I think it's really interesting because I've talked to some folks who are active right now, and they're like, we don't need them. And I'm like, that's an interesting idea there.
Yeah,
but do you?
I think that's a little bit of ego. I think that's a little bit of ego. Because, I mean, when I was in the military, I would have said the same thing. But drawn back now and looking at it from a, bigger perspective, a macro view, absolutely not in that sense. And you'd really hope that we could bring those recruiting numbers up. From what I understand, there's a lot of different factors that are going into it, to include like even just the physical health of the candidates.
Absolutely.
To the mental aspect and all the other categories that are necessary for someone to be a viable candidate. And then the wanting to serve even, right? Because that's a whole nother deal. You talk about all the conflicts we're in currently. That's a lot of different social issues there that are pushing on nerves that people may not want to sign up for. And then I look at it from a completely different perspective as well, from the exposure side, where like if Vietnam vets were going to go get exposed to Agent Orange and pretty much all die off before they got the PACT Act through to actually address that.
Right.
And every 1 out of 7 global war on terror veterans has some kind of service-related cancer, and you want kids to sign up to go do that?
Yeah.
And like, we're technically not even in a conflict at this point. Now, I won't sit here and just tell you the bad sides. There's obviously a ton of benefits, and I use all of those benefits to the fullest of their abilities, right? Like I use my GI Bill, I use my VA home loans, I use all those different things. But yeah, you get this odd scale of, do the benefits outweigh the drawbacks?
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, your kid's not joining the military. I personally can't say right now. I'm very conflicted into whether I would tell my children, yes, it's a good idea to join the military, or no, it's a bad idea.
Right.
There's that like
Yeah.
a lot of pros, a lot of cons. Like,
To answer your question, I guess that you presented to me that Gary answered really well. More directly though, is, JROTC. I did have the opportunity to go talk to a JROTC senior class, and pretty much all like 20 of them that were in there were already depped into either Marine Corps, Air Force, whatever. But I did notice a few of them, like obviously I didn't say anything, it's not my place to, but I did notice like they're nowhere near the physical. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, cool, you're going to join, but you need to be ready for what you're about to undertake. And then to add to that, you having kids, and what Gary said too, yes, I know veteran or military population is, 1% of the whole population. But if you look at over the course of, call it 2001 to 2020 or so, call it 20 years of wars, how many of our kind of generation have kids, and how many of them are telling them like, no, you're not going to join because this is what I dealt with.
Right.
Yeah.
And to add to like the injuries and cancer, whatever, anything else you can name.
MST.
Yeah. And a lot of newer Gen Zers, again, will say, like don't feel the urge to serve, probably like a lot of us did. Like I was a senior in high school on 9/11. I remember it like it was yesterday. And that was my urge, like, nope, I need to go do this. I need to do my part. Selfish for the country, whatever, patriotism, whatever you want to call it. But just in general, the new generation of high school seniors, juniors, seniors, and maybe a year or two into college, 18, 19 years old, they don't have that calling to like, hey, this is what I want to go do. This is what I need to go do. And I'm willing to give up my life for 3 or 4 years or more for benefits from it. Or they're like, nope, it's just, I don't get it, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, people may or may not have noticed we're working on a movie called This Is Not a Draft, and it's talking about veterans who served after 9/11. And so that's that. Joe, you and I are pretty close in age to when 9/11 happened. So that was a big draw for us, for me, right? It was like,
Yeah.
oh, we're all going. Like a lot of, not all. It still wasn't all of us.
Yeah.
Not everybody. But I had 1,500 people in my senior year, and I only knew one other person who went personally.
Wow.
Same.
So it wasn't everybody,
Right.
but it was still like now it's almost unheard of. Like my kids don't know anybody who's going off to join the military.
No.
And it's a totally different story. And I get it, because we had a real prescient reason to join. We had a reason that like was motivating us beyond, hey, you can get college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we had a reason to join. And,
Well,
and
I
people
joined for
don't
the
know.
dress blues, but but no, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. I wanted to ask everybody, so we'll go down the line. Favorite memory from being in the military. We'll start here and work in.
So I started out in Fast Company, Security Forces, and then I went to 2-7 Golf Company in 29 Palms. When I was in Fast, 3 different stations: Rota, Spain, Yokosuka, Japan, and I forget the last one. Rota, Spain, if I didn't already say that. We were in Japan, and we were able to, we were supposed to go on, I think, a MEU down to Australia and like do all that. But that got canked because sequestration kicked in. So that was a big letdown. But we did get something else, which was we got permission from the Japanese government, because that's the only way you can do this, to go to Iwo Jima. And so we got to go to Mount Suribachi in Iwo Jima, and I got to hike that hill, and it is a small mountain, and see like where the Marines landed and how they took the beachhead, and the sand is just like insane. It's like deep, obviously like really, really black volcanic sand, but just like you're running in place when you're running up that
Too,
beach.
right? Tons of coral.
I didn't really see that much because I didn't like go wade out in the water or anything, but just from running up the beach, like I was like, how are you under machine gun fire? Like from nests that are on that mountain, I was like, it's just suicide.
Yeah.
And you get into the Marine Corps
Different
history
generation.
and all that, and how they said we wouldn't take that island in 1,000 years, and we took it in like, what was it, 2-3 days or something?
I think it was 4 days.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah.
Still, it happened.
Insane. And then they have the really cool monument on top of Mount Suribachi. Got to take a little bit of sand, and just like super surreal, very cool experience while I was in.
Yeah, I think everyone knows that iconic photo of the 6 Marines and the corpsman, whatever the number was, mounting the flag on Mount Suribachi, pushing it up. And I think all branches use that in some sort of way, but that's definitely a Marine Corps ethos thing that we take personally, because that's the one thing about the Marine Corps that, again, I'm going to be biased about it, but we carry our traditions with us. So everything that we do, call it Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever, we're carrying the traditions from World War II Marines, from World War I Marines with us, and that's our culture. My favorite, military Marine Corps experience goes without even having to preface it. Afghanistan, 2011, 2012, banging and singing. Everyone knows saying in Afghanistan.
Oh yeah.
3-5 Dark Horse in 2010. They lost like 25 Marines in a matter of a couple weeks. We came in kind of the year after that. Logistics convoy kind of security company or platoon with RCT-8, and running around, driving up and down, providing security, doing all sorts of stuff in Afghanistan. And I'm not going to shout out any of my boys, but there's a few of them who they are if they see this. Hitting IEDs left and right, it sucked, but I loved every single second of it. And I would go back in a heartbeat and do it again.
Absolutely.
Mine is probably back in the barracks. I don't know why. It's a stupid little story, but we created this mosh pit in the barracks, and we all just were like having this mosh pit. I don't know why that was the first thing that popped in my head.
Was it out in the smoke pit?
No, it was
Oh.
just right in the barracks, and we were all just having a mosh pit. We put on flogging mollies, and
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was
Love flogging
yeah.
Yeah.
Molly.
It was a really good time.
Love
But
it,
I don't know
love it.
why that was the first thing that popped in my head.
I've been a part of a few smoke pit barracks
Yeah.
parties where
Yeah.
Right?
out underneath that,
Oh,
tent
yeah.
thing is just hundreds of Marines drinking beer,
Yeah.
eating pizza,
Yeah.
causing a ruckus.
Yeah.
So that's where my mind goes when you say that.
Yeah. Oh, I get what you're saying.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah. No, well, so
Yeah.
right.
so my favorite memory, and I wasn't actually in uniform at the time. I was as a contractor, but I'm gonna call it the same because it was landing in Helmand Province, and I was in a Black Hawk, and we're landing. And
What year?
This was 16.
Okay.
16, I was at Helmand. We had just
Pretty
closed.
kinetic still.
It was the last place in Afghanistan that was kinetic
Yep.
at that point.
Yep.
Like it was literally like there was that, and then on the east, on the far east over by Pakistan.
Yep.
And that was pretty much the only thing that was active at that point. But we were on a 1 hour stand down. We had to leave. We had to have everything packed and all the classified shredded within an hour because if they took the city center, they were gonna overrun us. And so that was the best moment. But the best moment was landing. We took that fire and the door gunner just started going at it. And I was listening to AC/DC, and I've told this story I've told this story on everything that I've talked about, but it's that moment, and I just felt so alive.
Do you remember
Yeah.
what song?
Yeah, I do. It was Thunderstruck.
Even
Oh,
better.
that's good.
Yeah, Thunderstruck.
Back in Black is always a good one.
Back in Black blows that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was listening to that playlist
Yeah.
because I had just come from Kandahar to Helmand.
Very cool.
They were dumping me off. Yeah, loved it. But that's like my favorite moment. Totally. And then there was one where we did in Turncout. I was in uniform at the time for that one, but yeah, that was fun. We had a whole bunch of craziness happen. That base got overrun, and that was just. And I'm like you, like it's those things that yes, most people think that like those are like the moments that freak you out or whatever, but those are the moments where I felt the most alive.
Right.
And I like.
And I think we can all say it comes down to like a shared experience. It's like, yes, there's trauma involved with it, but because it was shared amongst like your group of service members, your peers, your brothers, your sisters, like it's not as traumatic because you had someone to your left and to your right doing that with you.
Yeah.
And I have to go back to Home Record Project now and say, like, that's what I would love to instill in these service members, like getting out. Like, hey, we're those peers to your left and right. You still have that for you, even though you took the uniform off.
Everybody that we've talked to in the documentary that we're working on, I'm pretty sure this is the direction. We're not done with the documentary, so we don't know yet. But I'm pretty sure the direction it's going is that community.
100%. Tribe.
It's that tribe, exactly. Great book, Sebastian
Younger.
Yep. Really good book. I've recommended it before on the channel, but yeah, check it out. It's good.
I think that's the hardest part about like getting out is you don't have that community, you don't have that person that you can call and be there for you whenever you need.
Yeah. That's why it's important to, find one of these nonprofits or whatever who's doing something, right? You talked about MVP. They're creating spaces for people to have community.
Yeah. PBA,
Yeah.
Patrol Principate, there's a ton of them now, and I really like the direction it's headed to. I call it like the new age, veteran experience where you get like more outdoors, exercise, wellness focused things as opposed to some of the older traditional ones, which I'm honestly not too opposed to the older traditional ones every now and then too.
Right.
But I think
They serve their purpose.
yeah. But at the same time, like, I like the direction it's headed with that and that mindset to kind of do something good for yourself, mental health wise, physically.
Right, all the wellness stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I think I'd be lying if there wasn't a little bit of personal, selfish, therapeutic therapy that goes in with what we do. It helps me too.
Right.
100%.
This is me getting my veteran community. That's why I started doing this, because I go and I talk to people and it's like, this is my therapy.
You get the warm and
Yeah.
fuzzies from
I
it.
love it too.
Hell
Yeah.
But not only that, so I think this is a huge thing I've seen with everybody here and then some in the veteran community. Like we all joined because we wanted to serve in some capacity,
Yeah.
And you are helping the Home of Record project by doing this completely out of pocket. You know, your time's valuable and you're here helping us do this. Same thing with you guys, right? All of us. But it's going back to that service, and we, maybe selfishly or not, right, are giving that service back to our community that we know also vibes with that.
Right.
And that is just so gratifying.
Yeah.
Like it gives me goosebumps and
Exactly.
like giving that back to our community. So
Absolutely. That's
I know
awesome.
we're probably trying to wrap up here, but the last thing I will say is, we're talking about, Gen Z, different generations of Marines, different generations of services, branches. World War II generation, I think they will always be the best generation because 99% of them were drafted and like, hey, you're going here, you're literally defending our nation. For some of us, it wasn't the same dynamic in the military, but I think now, I definitely think the post 9/11 GWAT generation is definitely a close second to the World War II generation. And because of them are unfortunately dying off, I think we're going to be looked at as the next best generation. Because maybe we didn't directly defend our country, like say in World War II, but we called the answer, or we answered the call to serve. And now all of us are doing this in this space.
Band of Brothers, there's a moment where they're interviewing one of the guys, and I wish I remembered which one said it, but there's a line in there, and it says, well, it was different. We were attacked. And that, to me, 9/11, that was that moment. We were attacked.
Right.
100%.
And this wasn't Hawaii, which, let's be honest, 1942, that was a protectorate. Wasn't even a state at that point.
Yeah.
Like, this was New York City.
Mm-hmm.
This
Exactly.
New York City was hit. So yeah. So I think it's really like that. We've all, everybody from the GWAT generation volunteered to serve, and that makes a difference.
100%.
The draft aspect, I mean, I feel for all those guys who were drafted because that's not great. So yeah.
No, nothing but respect for them, obviously.
Absolutely.
But I think
Right.
our
Absolutely.
generation coming up now has the opportunity to grasp this industry, if you want to call it that, or grasp this, culture and make it our own moving forward.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today, guys. It was really fun.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
thank you for having us.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to put their links in the show description so you can check it out, Home of Record Project. And they're on all the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. I don't know if I missed something there, but yeah. But all right, good time. Thanks, guys, for watching. Take care.